They were nowhere when your world crumbled in silence. Not a call, not a knock, not even a whisper in your defense. You sat there torn, trembling, building yourself back up piece by shattered piece, while they chose their comfort over your chaos. And now that you've risen, now that your name is whispered with respect, and your presence has grown louder than their ignorance ever was, they reappear, with soft eyes and gentler tones, as if time rewrote history, as if they had been holding your hand through the storm instead of watching from a safe distance. They say we were worried. No, they were watching, and now that the spotlight warms your face, they want a seat in your light. But where were they when you were buried in darkness? Why do they care now, when your healing no longer requires their help? The silence was loud back, then they say they care now. But where was that care when you were gasping for air in a room full of silence? When your name disappeared from conversations, and your pain was met not with concern but with convenient quiet, the silence, it was deafening, not just empty, but loud with what it really meant. They chose not to see, not to ask, not to reach out. And that choice, it spoke louder than any apology they try to offer now. Back then, your tears weren't dramatic enough to win them over. Your breakdowns weren't convenient to witness. Your struggle was a little too raw, a little too real, and they preferred distance over discomfort. So they vanished. They kept their hands clean while you clawed your way through grief, confusion, and betrayal. And now, as you stand calmer, clearer, perhaps even stronger, they return with soft words and feigned concern, as if they've earned the right to stand in your presence again. But the truth is, their absence was their answer. They didn't just go quiet. They chose silence. They chose not to care when it cost them something. And now that your strength costs them nothing, they parade around it like they were part of the journey. But you remember every unanswered message, every "I've just been busy," every hollow excuse disguised as a reason. And more than anything, you remember the echo of your own voice, the only one speaking in your defense when the world went mute. That's what changed you, not their return, not their newfound concern, but the way you learned to stand without their hands holding you up. You see, care that arrives when the crisis has passed is not Carrot's curiosity, or worse, guilt trying to dress up as kindness. And you've learned now. You've learned to listen not just to what people say, but to what they don't say when it matters most. You've learned that silence can scream, and sometimes the loudest betrayals are the quietest ones. So when they ask you now why you've become distant, cold, selective, don't explain. Let their memories do the math. Let their silence speak for itself, because real love, real care, it doesn't come and go with seasons. It stays when things are messy. It shows up when you're no one's priority. It doesn't need applause or an audience. So no, you're not bitter. You're not cruel. You're just awake now. You see who stood still when you fell, who turned away when you reached out, and who pretended to care. Only after your wounds stopped bleeding. That's not love. That's convenience. And your story deserves more than fair. Whether visitors. It deserves witnesses who were there not just in your victory, but in your void. Regret wears a mask called concern. They knock now, gently, carefully, as if the door they once ignored now matters. Their words are softer, more thoughtful. Their tone carries a hint of something that sounds like worry, like empathy. But listen closely and you'll hear it. It's not concern, it's regret. Not the kind born from love, but the kind soaked in guilt and self-preservation. They don't ask how you are because they're invested in your peace. They ask because your silence has become too loud to ignore. They've seen you recover, reinvent, rise, and now their absence tastes bitter in their own mouths. So they cover it with sweetness. They offer kind words not to heal you, but to redeem themselves. Regret rarely comes dressed in rags. It wears robes, warm smiles, and borrowed compassion. And when they say, "I've been thinking about you," what they mean is, "I've been thinking about what I didn't do, the calls you waited for, the messages that never came, the empty chairs in your darkest rooms, all of it echoes now, and they feel the tremble in their conscience." But instead of apology, they give performance. They hope that pretending to care now will erase the fact that they didn't back then. But it doesn't work that way. Not anymore. You've lived long enough to know the difference between genuine concern and strategic re-entry. True care doesn't need to make an entrance. It never left. But regret is always late. It arrives after the storm has passed, carrying an umbrella you no longer need. And still, it wants to be seen. It wants credit for showing up at all, but you remember what they forget: the silence when it mattered, the ghosting when it counted, the selfishness disguised as distance, and now that you've survived without their help, their reappearance isn't healing, it's haunting. You look at them, smiling, nodding, pretending, and you wonder, do they truly believe you don't see it? That you can't feel the hollowness behind their words, because you do. You feel it like a chill. Their timing exposes them. They didn't come back to stand with you. They came back to ease the sting of their own absence. That's what this is. A mask of concern, worn by a face that watched you break and chose not to bend. So no, you're not unkind for stepping back. You're not heartless for not opening the door too wide. You're simply aware that not every warm word is rooted in care, that sometimes checking in is a quiet confession. I failed you when it counted, and I hope you forgot. But you didn't forget. You just grew past the need to be validated by those who couldn't show up when it was dark. Their regret belongs to them. Let them carry it. You've carried enough. You became valuable without them. They didn't notice you when you were invisible, when your light was dim, when your voice trembled, when your worth was buried beneath the noise of everyone else's demands. They walked past you like you were part of the furniture, background, ordinary, replaceable. But now that you've grown, now that you've found your pace, your strength, your voice, they look at you differently. Suddenly you matter. Suddenly your name tastes important in their mouths. They reach out now. Comment, compliment, connect. They want to be seen with you. Why? Because the version of you that once needed help was easy to ignore. But this version, the one that no longer needs them, is magnetic. And it's not love that brings them back. It's relevance. Your transformation disrupted their comfort. They didn't believe in you, but now that the world seems to, they want a front row seat. They speak of memories, shared moments, as if they had anything to do with your becoming. But you know the truth. They didn't clap when you were crawling. They waited to cheer once you were standing tall. This new version of you, calm, confident, grounded, it didn't grow in their presence. It bloomed in their absence. You learned to become valuable alone, not because you wanted to, but because they left you no choice. And that value you carry now, it wasn't handed to you. It was built, painfully, moment by moment, in silence and self-belief. Now they act as if they always saw it in you, but you remember the way they overlooked you when you were unsure of yourself, when you were doubting every decision, hoping someone would just stay and believe. No one did, so you became your own witness, your own anchor, and now they want to orbit around the light they never fueled. They think your success is an invitation, but it isn't. It's a boundary, a reminder that not everyone who claps for you now deserves a seat at your table, especially not the ones who disappeared when you were starving. You were once too small for their time. Now you're too whole for their performance. Their sudden attention is not a sign of your healing. It's a reaction to your glow. But remember this, your value does not increase because of their recognition. It existed long before they noticed. They just weren't looking. So don't let their return confuse you. They didn't come back because they care. They came back because you became visible, and visibility attracts all kinds: supporters, admirers, and opportunists. It's your clarity now that must protect you. Not everyone who returns belongs. Some just want to touch what you've built without understanding what it cost. And if they couldn't see your worth in the shadows, they don't deserve to stand in your light. Let them watch, let them wonder, but don't let them in. You're not here to prove yourself anymore. You're here to protect what you became without them. Memory is convenient for the pretender. Isn't it strange how their memory only begins when your life started looking better? They don't recall the nights you drowned in silence, the days you walked with your head down, carrying wounds you never showed. They don't remember ignoring your messages, brushing off your pain, or excusing their distance with a casual "life's been busy." No, their memory begins right where the story gets brighter, when you finally stood back up, when your eyes no longer begged and your voice no longer cracked. That's the version they're drawn to now, the strong you, the rising you, the healed you. But they forget. The healed you is built on layers of abandonment, and their absence is part of the foundation. You see, the pretender doesn't carry your whole story. They only carry the part that flatters their return. They remember what's convenient. They speak as if nothing happened, as if your suffering wasn't made heavier by their silence. They say things like, "I've missed you," but never once ask what they missed in you. They don't want to face the truth, that their absence shaped you more than their presence ever did. You were tested in moments they chose not to see. You were transformed in the spaces they avoided, and now they return with selective memory, hoping to skip the parts where they failed you. But you remember being left unread when you needed a voice. You remember watching your phone in the dark, waiting for someone who never came. You remember how heavy healing felt when no one was clapping, when no one was watching. That's the chapter they've forgotten, or chosen to ignore. Because it's easier to admire your strength than to admit they abandoned your weakness. But you're not here to pretend with them. You're not rewriting history to make them feel better. You've outgrown the need for people who only show up for the highlight reel. True loyalty isn't proven in good times. It's revealed in the hard ones, and their version of you, the one they suddenly admire, was born in rooms they never entered. They didn't get you here. They simply came back once you arrived. So let them say what they need to. Let them remember what suits them. But you hold the full truth, and you have every right to honor it, because memory isn't just about what's recalled. It's about what's acknowledged. And if they can't face the parts of you that were broken, they don't deserve to celebrate the version of you that's whole. Let their convenient memory be their comfort. It won't rewrite the facts. You lived it. You felt every moment, and you don't need anyone to remember it for you, because you never forgot. True care doesn't arrive when the applause begins. They didn't walk beside you in the dark, yet they want to stand with you in the light. Strange, isn't it? How they show up when the weight has been lifted, when the storm has passed, when the world has started to notice you. That's when they return, dressed in concern, smiling like they never left. But true care doesn't arrive when the applause begins. It shows up when there's nothing to gain, no spotlight to share, no recognition waiting on the other side. The ones who truly cared, they were quiet but present. No grand gestures, no loud promises, just silent, steady support. They didn't need to understand everything, they just stayed. But the ones standing at your door now, they need the lights on. They need the story to be beautiful. They need your wounds to be fully healed, your tears dried, your life reconstructed, because their comfort depends on your strength, not your struggle. They say they're proud of you, but pride is easy to show when the battle's already been won. Where were they when the war was still raging inside you, when you were lost, directionless, breaking quietly in places no one could see? They couldn't handle that version of you. You were too real, too raw, too inconvenient. But now that you're composed, balanced, and rebuilding, they are back, offering watered-down versions of love and recycled encouragements. But you remember who checked in when there was no crowd watching, who stayed when there was nothing you could offer but your brokenness. That's the measure of care. Not how loud someone claps when you rise, but how still they sit with you when you fall, and those who only show up after your resurrection. They're not here for you. They're here for what your story does for them, because to be close to someone who survived gives them a sense of borrowed strength. But borrowed strength is not the same as earned loyalty. You've earned everything by standing alone, by bleeding in silence, by learning that love doesn't always look like a hand outstretched. It sometimes looks like your own reflection, whispering, "Keep going," when no one else would. So don't be fooled by the return of those who come only when the music plays. Test their footsteps. Ask yourself, did they come when it was quiet, when the room was cold, when your hands were empty and your voice was shaking? If not, then let them stay in the audience, let them admire from afar. You've already walked too far, climbed too high, healed too deeply to be fooled by sudden warmth. True care isn't seasonal. It doesn't bloom only when the garden looks pretty. It stands there, roots deep, even when everything is withering. And you've learned to recognize the difference, so smile if you must. Be kind if you choose, but never again confuse applause with loyalty. You don't owe your light to those who disappeared in your darkness.